sure if I was. Okay, so I made sure the background was blue so my presentation indexes were showing up there. But now I want to make it pages, and each one has 2 items in it. So I'm just going to write some workout going. I need to stop. Okay. I'm just going to write some quick code because, we don't really have a good legitimate data source. So I'm just going to go into my model controller. So one thing you'll note that when you initialize this thing, it actually just goes and gets a date formatter and then gets all the month symbols and puts that into our page data. That's how all those months get stored into our app. And I apologize. Earlier I did not have my presentation theme on, so let's make sure that people can see that screen okay. So basically what we want our data view controller to now have is a kind of a string array so that I can properly say that my count of items here is a count. And then here I can say my data object subindex path item. Oh, and then here, we don't really, what do I want this to be? Yeah, we'll just set it to nothing for now. So over in my model controller, I don't really want to do this anymore. I want to okay, so I'm going to go ahead and loop through this with an enumeration, which means I can keep track of an index and an item. So if it's an odd number, that's going to be my second item. So I want to put page data. Sorry, I'm just doing this quick just so we can move on. I'm going to put that in, and then I'm going to say count. I'm going to increment my counter, else it's an even number, so I just want to put that into my item. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and I'm always going to do that. But if I'm on an odd number, I'm going to increment my counter. Oh, and then Okay, so now I need this to be an array of string. I'm just going to quickly initialize. You know what? I'm not going to do that. Don't need this anymore. But what I do need again, let's just I'm sure there's a okay, so I need to return the index of the view controller that has that in there, so I can get rid of that. It was simpler when things were just an array of strings. Okay, what else do I need to change in here? To make sure that that always has an array in it. It's an array of string arrays. Okay, let's see what that tells me. Okay, it says I'm missing, so if I don't, okay. All right, so that's succeeded. So now I'm gonna run it. And again, really what I was trying to show was, oh, I have an error here. Index out of range. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and try that. Don't know if it's, oh, it's launching. Hmm. Oh, and it's telling me, okay, so I'm just going to forget this and just initialize a bunch of them. I'm not exactly sure why this page data has one value. Oh. Okay, let's just fix this. So I'm gonna say, okay. So now we have our little banner up here with the months, and now you can see we only have, well, we've got January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December, and for some reason we have an extra one. And we have an extra one because I put an extra one in there always. So I don't want to do it quite like that. So probably what I want to do is I want to say for so in my little algorithm, we're doing 2 cells per page. So I'm going to do half of them. And of course, we could have some kind of calculation, because for an iPad, you may want to put 3 cells in each page. Okay, so now we've got January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, and the 6th page has November, December. And now we want to go ahead and improve those cells. And again, just to review what I was going for, so Apple News had this banner that used to run across the top, and it would have sales, and it was kind of animated with these snowflakes falling in it, and it had different news articles and pages that you could scroll through. So that's what inspired me to do this little demo. So, but I'm just demoing how that core animation can be coded, and that's what we did earlier today. I just figured I might as well continue on and make this banner a collection view. So that's what we did over here in the storyboard. We created another view control. We put a container in, and we put our page view controller embedded in that container. And in our data view controller, we have a collection cell. The collection cell just has a simple label in it. Now we're going to make it a little bit more responsive. So there's another item I can add, just because I like the default size. something like that. When I initialize this, I want let's go ahead and make it let's add a corner radius equal to I don't want it to be, just try that. We'll add a border color. And whenever I do corners like that, you need to make it mask to the bounds. And then over here, oops. I thought I was putting that in a method. Okay, which method do I need? I need to know what the size for an item is going to be. So for now, we're just going to do it this way, and then I'll improve that code a bit. Just going to see what it looks like. I don't really need that breakpoint anymore. Okay. So you can see it did put some cells around it, but they're kind of tiny. I think that 50 by 50 default size is too small. So we're going to go ahead and make that code a little bit more responsive and actually react to the size of my collection view, which is generally a better way to do it. It's nice to have a default size, especially if you're working on a project that's designed for a particular device size, or you could just have a couple different sizes depending on the device. But another way to do it is to actually get the collection size. I'm just going to get the bounds. And then I want the width of my collection item So for me, I know I want to try to fit 2 in there. So I'm going to divide my overall size by 2 and my collection item size height is I actually want to use try to use the height of the collection itself and return that collection item size. We're going to tweak this just a bit after we take a look at what this code looks like in our app. Okay, so you can see I kind of took up that whole thing, and now my other item is down here. You can see that it automatically accounted for scrolling, and then I can scroll this way to get to the different months, but again, I've got to scroll down to get to that other one, which isn't really what I want. So I need to change the size of my item to allow for the 2 to fit in there. So let me see what I have on my storyboard for that collection. So there's a view layout. So let's change that spacing for sales down to 0 and see how that affects our collection view. Okay, so we've got 2 of them there now. I didn't give it any spacing, which I probably should go ahead and allow for 10 for spacing. Between the cells, and I probably just needed 10. I put 20, but let's see how that looks. Again, a lot of these things could be configurable, and maybe it depends on the number of items you have in your cell. So like on an iPad, where maybe you have 4 items in a particular page, maybe you want to leave a little bit more. Of course, then you're going to divide by 4 and still leave the spacing. So it's a little bit more spacing than I'd like to see. So I think 10 would be okay. And then let's see how the height looks okay. I'm not really going to complain about that. I could tend to see the alpha maybe a bit lower on that guy, so we can just make him maybe a quarter. What else don't I like? And then let's go ahead and give him a tile. We are doing the winter game. We are doing those Winter Olympics. Okay. So now I've got those 6 pages scrolling through. You could make these cells interactive. And then again, I just used the months, but your data source would be whatever other interesting things you were trying to develop. But this was just a way to show that snow falling animation in a page view controller that is independent of something else running in your app. So I'm trying to think what else we could improve upon. I mean, well, there's lots I could improve upon, but anything else we need to kind of demonstrate for this particular demo? I could see what it looks like on a iPad next, and kind of what we need to do to make it a little bit more responsive to the size of an iPad. So we'll just grab, everybody likes the iPad Pro. So we're going to give that guy a whirl. We'll probably see. let's just take a look at what I put in this guy. So he ended up being 164 by that, so we can just call him 200 by 200. Then I could put in there my preferred size is 200, 200, just so I know what it is. Okay, so again, the items got stretched out a little bit, which is fine because we were still using the width of our collection view and then expanding our cells to fill up so that we can show two of them. But in this case, we probably want to be able to put 4 in there, so I would have to do some calculation. Some calculation to show that it's doesn't need as many page views or page controllers. So I could use that size of the cell and the length of the collection view to calculate how many. So in my model controller, I may have to be able to calculate, okay, what is the size of my data view controller collection view? And then possibly, so probably here, what I would need to do is I would need to pull all this code out and not do it until after I know. I mean, I guess I could, I could probably just put this up here. Let me get a data view controller. Then I can say let the size equal dot Okay, so I don't remember offhand. Okay. Okay, so I've got a default, not that I need it here, but it should stop at my breakpoint. Oh, oh, it did not like my, because I called it main. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so I got a data view controller, but I didn't have a collection view in it. Well, let me just see if I can just get the size of something. Oh, okay. Okay, so now I've just got the 3 pages, which is kind of what I was expecting, but my months aren't lining up quite right. So I've probably got some problem in here. So let's just run this again. Oh, I know what it is. I know what it is. I've probably got this okay now. So I do have 4 values in each of them. So in this page, I do have that. So if I scroll this way, you'll see the rest of them. So what I didn't change was in my actual collection delegate. Um, so now I need to know uh, that same thing. So my model controller, I think I want to items per page. Oh, I know how many items per page. Silly me. Okay. Oh, make a drinking game out of this. Okay, there we go. So now I've got the 4 showing up there. It kind of responded to the size of that view. So on an iPad, it just shows those. I'm not really confident this is going to work, but no, it's not refreshing. So it did kind of respond in some of these. You can tell it kind of built a bigger size item. So then if I run this back on our good old iPhone 8 Plus, it should respond to the smaller width. He just really doesn't want to start, does he? And hopefully he goes back and he reacts and says he's got enough room to put 2 items on each of those page controllers. And then you can make those respond to some kind of click. And again, I know I've got the months on there, but whatever data source you're pulling your information from, I'm sure Apple's pulling it from some curated list of news articles. So we'll just review this Snowflake controller. So in my main view controller, basically I instantiated the Snowflake controller and I told it to add my event banner view to that. And I can just show you, I could actually add this to my view. And now you can see those. This is also has the snowflakes on it. Again, that's an independent view and an independent controller. This is my main view controller. The only thing I'm doing in there is I'm instantiating my Snowflake controller, and I'm saying, hey, I don't know what this view is, but add some snowflakes to it. And that's all this code does. I mean, that the view controller just instantiates the Snowflake controller and says, add your emitter to this particular view. And of course, he has no idea what it is. The magic of it is the fact that in my storyboard, it's a view that's an actual container, and that container has this root view controller, which if you go look at what it is, it's this root view controller. And this root view controller is a UI page view controller delegate. He has a page view controller that he's creating. And again, this was all code that comes whenever you create an app for a page controller. The only thing I changed was that I wanted it to be scrolling. That was the only change to this particular class I made. In my data view controller, of course, I added my collection view and I changed, I added the logic so that we could create a collection view. And then in the model controller, again, I just changed it from an array of strings to an array of strings because I kind of wanted to create separate pages and on those pages have an array of those strings. I also added this delegate so that I could put the count index so you know how many page items are present. We created this Snowflake controller, which is using core animation. I had an image of a circle, right? And that's the cell contents. And I just made sure that we were configuring it kind of at a random configuration. We were playing around with different settings, um, and finally came up with these were good enough to make it pass as, snow falling. When we add it to view, we have to create that layer's position. And again, we were fiddling around with the points of where that position should be. Too far over to the right, it looks like it's just kind of half snowing. So we had to make sure it was far enough over to the left to get that whole frame. The emitter mode, you can play around with that. There's different, there's like a circle, there's a layer, there's a volume, different emitter modes that you can play with. The layer takes an array of cells, which we just said was our snow cell here. Again, we kind of use these settings like velocity range and scale range to give it different sizes, different values, so that the snowflakes look and appear random. We also gave it an alpha component and an alpha range so that there's some variation in the transparency of those cells. And then when we pass that view to our controller, we just say, hey, whatever view you are, add me to or add my struct information to that layer. We created a actual cell for the collection, gave it some configurations and a simple view for that collection view. We went back to our data view controller. We made sure we registered our collection view cell with our collection view. We made sure that we told the collection view how many sections it had, which was just the number of items in our page. And then when he calls us to say what should the cell at that index should be, we say, hey, collection view, go give me another cell with that reuse identifier that we configured when we registered him. And we said, hey, just configure it. It was a simple object, just a string. We pass the string to him, and he kind of configures himself based on that. Okay, so that's it. Thanks, and I'll be keeping an eye out, and if you have any suggestions on another little demo, otherwise I'll be back in a few days.